Hello, good evening. Welcome back, everybody, to Latino Conservation Week kickoff. We're so excited to share films and filmmakers tonight. In particular, we're thrilled to welcome and to do a very special virtual screening of Los Courage Camp's Creando Olas, followed by a filmmaker Q&A. So please enjoy the film and stick around for the Q&A with the filmmakers, and let's get the show started.
The ocean taught me so much. And in that first year that I was conquering this really new big thing, especially as a kid that never grew up playing any sports, and to go straight into one of the toughest sports there probably is to learn, which is surfing and navigating the ocean, I realized that the ocean had this wonderful library of lessons that I think in some ways we can kind of tap into in dry land, but she really is a mother teacher. What Courage Camps is and how it works is that we provide free access to surfing and a lot of the other activities that help children tap into mental and physical wellness and strength building activities. They really just help them tap into their courage. We provide everything for free. So surf lessons, for example, can be really expensive, $150, renting a surfboard. And what we do is we put these community events together at the beach, and bring 30 or more children and their families to just enjoy a day at the beach and learn something completely new. For a lot of them, they're returning, but for some, they're completely new. And they're starting to join this community on the ocean, on the sand, and we have everything that they need.
My name is Anna DeLeon. I am Isabel DeLeon's mom. Isabel's always been a really super bold, like with her actions kind of kid. She had always wanted to get out in the water, but to be very honest with you, I don't know how to swim. So anytime we went to the ocean, I wasn't super keen on letting her go out there. Like the boogie board was sufficient for me. And she's doing everything I ever wanted to do, and I just haven't been bold enough or brave enough to do it. So definitely, I think a part of who she is as a kid, just bold and wanting to get out there, definitely helps me heal a little bit. And I have to manage a lot of my anxiety when she does things like this. So it's like I have to put my anxiety in a box, put it next to me, and let that be separate. Because, I mean, to be honest, I still have that anxiety. Like growing up, all we hear is like, ten cuidado, ten cuidado, no te metas al mar, no te metas al mundo, So you grow up with a lot of fear. And so I never wanted her to have those fears, but that has to do more with me, and I understand that. So I just have to like put my fears to the side and my anxiety and not pass it on to her.
Really bringing the youth together and helping spread the stoke of surfing to people of all ages. Let's not forget, this is Los Angeles County. This is basically the Dodgers Stadium of surfing. Right here.
I think the sport of surfing and the act of going to the ocean is a bigger metaphor for some of the things that children of color, especially in the city of Los Angeles, have to overcome. One of my favorite books is The Alchemist, and it's all about going on this long journey where you're the first in your family. And to see children, the kids that are part of Los Courage camps, make it all the way to the beach. For a lot of them, they had to get a ride, or one of their parents had to take a day off of work. They show up, and I think for the first time, they're surrounded by other faces that look like them. And I like to put Mexican blankets on the sand and bring pan dulce and play music if we can, where maybe before they feel like they're the only one that looks like them. And that will happen to them again in other parts of their lives. They will be the only one in a place that looks like themselves.
I've always seen surfing and I've wanted to try it, but there always has been that little I don't know if I'm gonna like it or if it's gonna be for me or if I'm gonna fit in with the surfing community, because I feel like the surfing community can be really depicted as this, has this image. It's kind of one group or kind of one race. I try not to have doubts in myself because it kind of closes me off. When I doubt myself, it just makes me question myself, and I don't like doing that. So I always like to try everything and see how it goes.
When you grow up in an environment where there's always chaos and there's always trauma and there's always something forcing you to fight for your survival, to have a moment where it's just you and the ocean and no other expectations, no other requirements, no other thing to be working towards, was the first time where I think I really felt peace.
You guys ready? Ready? Come on, let's go. Let's get all our surfers standing up. Everybody up. You guys have to carry your board.
So the fact that these little kids are out there surfing, doing something that for all intents and purposes in the Latino culture is dangerous, and scary. And just watching these little kids do it and do it with professional surfers and be out there being brave and bold and making these choices, that's really where courage kind of like comes in for me, just watching her do that. Like I let her climb trees, and I'm like, I'm just gonna watch you do it. I'm gonna try to not say don't do it. I'm just gonna watch you do it, and then say like, next time, you know, try to like watch where your hands are going, or try to watch where your feet are going. And that's like, I think I'm kind of leaning towards more that than saying don't do it, because I think that's how she has learned to be who she is becoming.
To teach a child that they can have an idea and that they can have the courage to try, to learn, to believe, to be different than the things that they saw in their neighborhoods is self-empowerment. It's returning power to this next generation. We call it Los Courage Camps because courage is such a critical emotion to not just development, but to this empowering, beautiful, elevated life that I think all children of color deserve, but often don't have. Because they come from environments where survival or getting through day by day is the only thing in front of them, and they're not seeing anything beyond that. And then on top of that, at school, the activities that allow them to explore who they can be or who they can become are disappearing. Courage is critical. So you're seeing this fear unlock. For some of them, it takes minutes. For others, it might take a whole year. But they come back different people every time, whether it's a year later or a wave later.
All right, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. And yeah, now we're excited to start the second portion of this, which is the Los Courage Camps Creando Olas filmmaker Q&A. I'm pleased to welcome Yesenia Vaga de Casas. Yesenia, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm super excited to be sharing this film for the first time, and excited to, hear how everyone has received it, and their own trials and tribulations when it comes to courage and building their own sense of self.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so we've got a lot of questions tonight. A few of them were submitted by folks who knew about the film but haven't watched it yet. Some of my own questions. So why don't we just jump right in, if that's okay?
Sure.
Great. Okay, so as part of the 10-year celebration and kickoff of Latino Conservation Week, Latino Outdoors has been focusing on the power of filmmaking and storytelling, especially today. Can you share with us your filmmaker's journey? Do you remember the first time that you picked up a camera or wrote a concept or edited your first cut? And then on the broader scale, what was the trail that took you from there to Courage Camps Creando Olas?
That is a loaded question. I'm just kidding. I'm so happy to answer it. So initially what brought me to storytelling is very close to the reason why we have Latino Conservation Week and why we have this day of like showing films and premieres and just sharing of ourselves and sharing of our knowledge and of our hearts and of our relationship with our external environments. So me growing up, I grew up in the inner city, back and forth between like what is like Azusa, what is like Tongaland, what is Ashushka. So all of the like canyons over there, I'm not sure if like where the audience is coming from, but I'm like in Southern California, San Gabriel Valley. So in between that and MacArthur Park. So it's like these huge differentiation of like the way that people live their lives. And so me seeing this growing up, being in between the United States and Mexico, and seeing the difference in between people's relationship with the land and people's relationship with each other was really what pushed me to be inspired to show other people's stories, because at heart I'm really we all want to like feel as if we're part of something bigger. And I found that film can be a wonderful tool for building empathy and understanding between worlds. And so that was initially like, I think once I started getting involved in filmmaking, what I started understanding was my purpose. And so I was dabbling in the entertainment industry. You know, being in LA, it's a little bit hard for anyone to enter the entertainment industry. And then me being like a little vaga, which is what my parents always call me, because if you guys are from the Latino community, you understand that like being called a vaga is like taboo and everything like that. And vaga just stands for vagabond, and that just means traveler, right? And so part of being a vagabond is like me always carrying home in my heart. And so understanding that about myself, I started to experience all these different things and like, you know, experimenting with courage in different ways before I even came in contact with those courage camps. And um, that looked like me skating, me being involved in like LA's underground scene, whether that's like with graffiti or like hip hop. I was a big dancer growing up. I did a lot of like ballet and like krump and hip hop, like all these different things. And you know, that really helped me to learn how to feel like safe in myself, because a lot of people coming from the inner city, they can have this like phobia of anything really, because you're like your nervous system is so jam packed. And you know, a lot of like my mission is to bring people back to themselves, and nature is a big part of that, right? Because you start to reflect on nature as like part of yourself, and you're like, okay, I'm safe here, I'm safe. And it's just about repeating that back and forth. But essentially, when I had that point of like feeling like, oh, I'm on top of the world, I can do anything, I I skipped my what is it? I was like in the middle of a career change. It was like, okay, continue painting sets for commercials, music videos, things like that, or transition into something that's like truly your passion. And it was in the middle of the pandemic. There was like so many things falling apart. I was like, oh, society can literally crash right now. And like all of us need to like return to our roots and like the way our parents, nuestros ancestros, like, you know, like the indigenous of the area, like the way that they would survive with the materials around them. So I was like very inspired to, you know, connect more with my family, with my grandparents, you know, anything and everything that can teach me more about myself. And that brought me into, you know, considering, and this is a little bit off topic, but considering like holistic medicine as my next career move in conjunction with continuing my filmmaking journey. And so while I was making this change, kind of similar to Giselle, the woman that you saw in the video, she also found surfing at a very pivotal moment in her life where, you know, she had like quit her job and like all these things were in the air, but like she just had this immense faith in her higher self because of the kind of peace that surfing brought her. She was able to kind of like see a little bit into like feel into the future and just have faith that that like everything's gonna work out, right? So I, in that same vein, was like in this like transitioning of like identities, and still staying true to my roots. I found those courage camps, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like I felt like I had like found the like whole reason for living all over again. And it's like one of those moments where you feel like scared that like God's gonna take your life away because you're like, I found the purpose of life or whatever. So like that was what surfing was to me. And so like me and Giselle, we kept in touch because I think we saw a little bit of a light in each other. And through that, we just kind of like built this relationship of like, oh, you're a filmmaker, that's cool. I'm looking for people to like bring onto this project. And so I was like, yeah, I'm all over it, like anything you want. And especially because like it's crazy when your life hits a high, everything comes crashing because, you know, like it's time for you to rebuild again. And so I was like in this dark place, kind of like, oh my gosh, like having to like validate myself and my mission again from a different source. You know, like a lot of us take validation from like our environment, and sometimes that could be a bad thing because it's not where we're meant to go. Eventually, like we might grow up together, there's like lessons we have to learn with each other, but eventually like we all have to take the courage to validate ourselves and to know that we are in our own right, in our own sovereignty. So with that, I was combined with our producer Annie and Fernando, who was our DP and editor, and I was really like, I want to direct this. And one, because editing is like, it's something that I do, but it's not something that I love. And directing is something that I love. So I was like, this is a part of me standing up for myself. And it really worked out because we found that a lot of our talents served our roles. And so here we are. And yeah.
That's amazing. That's certainly a journey. It kind of reminds me, so we've got an ongoing campaign with Latino Outdoors called Semillitas Outdoors. And, you know, on the surface, it seems like it's about youth outdoors, which I think could tie into, you know, the folks that gain so much benefit from courage camps. And yet, part of the other part of Semillitas Outdoors is that it doesn't matter which part of your life you're at, you can always plant new seeds. You can always be learning something new. And that seems like kind of what happened. You had, you know, your career path, your set design or whatever it was, and then a big moment in society, and you planted new seeds and you really went for it and you dove in. That's incredible. And we love story, you know, with nature, we love stories of rebirth and regeneration and you know, the seed that falls or the pine cone that falls doesn't just fall. Like there's so much more happening underneath the ground. So I'm very excited for you and that you were able to like transition all of that passion that was already obviously in there into like directing this beautiful piece. So I think one of my questions is, you know, oh, I believe we just got joined by Fernando.
Yeah.
All right, we'll say hi to Fernando.
Hi, Fern.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you doing? Well, okay, so Fernando, I don't know if you can hear me, but Yesenia was telling us about her journey and her filmmaker's journey, essentially, and how that led to working on Los Courage Camps Creando Olas. Do you want to share a little bit about your filmmaker's journey and how you got to work on this film with her?
Yeah, I feel like, sorry if you can't see my camera right now, but we were kind of just naturally all together all at once. And in the summer, we were just, you know, recording a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of footage and what's happening in Los Courage Camps. And eventually we realized, like, there's a story here happening. You know, there's a lot of people being impacted by the surrounding things that are happening. So we started just kind of documenting that, and with no intention at the beginning, but then afterwards realized that, wait, there's a big story here. There's actually people and families being impacted by the implications of Los Courage Camps.
So, one of the things I kind of want to focus on, because, you know, we show documentaries and we show screenings and films, and a lot of us go to them, but also on the behind the scenes, like a lot of folks are about to be emerging filmmakers, or they're aspiring, or they're storytellers and they don't even know it. You know, the program that we run is called, it's the storytelling arm of Latino Outdoors, and it's called Yo Cuento. I count, I matter, I have a story to tell. And so one of the things we strongly believe is that like advocacy and storytelling go hand in hand. And, you know, when you're a storyteller, you're advocating on behalf of your community or on behalf of things that you're passionate about. And when you're an advocate, you've got to have a strain of storytelling. So I think one of my questions is on a technical level, you know, Yesenia, I know that you're a first generation Mexican American, and I know that you, Fernando, are a Salvadorian American. Are there any parts of your culture that you can think about, you know, growing up, that you can tie a through line that you're like, I've worked in these fields, and yet my work is different because of who I am, because of what my culture and my background is, and I, you know, is there anything that you can identify, even if you haven't thought about it before, that you're like, yes, actually, I do carry this, and this is something that's unique, and I bring this with me, you know, whether I sit at the editing bay or whether I call a shot. Anybody want to go first on that?
Fern, do you have an answer?
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of think of when I first started in this career of filmmaking, and it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm going to do film school and I'm going to do, you know, the general route of what people do. I decided to do more of a route of mentorship. And I followed a lot of guides that I had and people who had done film school and have people who have done worked on films and worked on shorts and all that stuff. And I just kind of followed their advice, and it was really for me impactful to understand their experiences and then understand how they reflected on kind of how they perceived those and how they understood those experiences, you know. So it was more of like a understanding how they perceive situations rather than here is how we do things and this is how things are laid out in the book.
Right. Yesenia?
Yeah. And I know, I think Fren has also mentioned to us that like his parents have a crazy story too, being like Salvadorian raised in like the Civil War that was going on. So like, I think similarly to him, I also gained inspiration from my parents and their storytelling abilities because, so my dad's from Zacatecas, and so he's big on like, oh, like when we were like in the revolution, like fighting for independence and stuff like that. Like that was always like his thing of like having pride um, and so me like, you know, keeping that, storing it, and like not really finding a place to really like express that. I just like held it in my heart with like this deep, heavy love, and I was just like, you know, like those teens that are like so what do they call it, like angsty, and I was just like, oh, I like need to share this. So when I was in film school, something that I kept hearing about was like everyone that would come in, they would be like, don't go to film school, don't go to film school, because you don't make films about making films, you make films about life. And so I took that and I ran, and I was like, I'm gonna live as much life as possible, and and I'm gonna do it my way, and I'm going to like make sure that everyone can see that they don't have to live in this little box, and like they can have the strength and like the inspiration, and like just know that there's somebody out there that like wants the same things that they want, and they can go for it. And so uh I think that's what informs my storytelling a lot. Yeah, I'm just reading the comments that are coming up.
So I think that's great, and one of the important things you both touched on is that like perspective helps inform, and you know, kind of how you're helping others, you're helping the next generation. For us, that's kind of similar to breaking trail, you know, where you're the first one that goes through the snow, the deep snow, or you're the one that like helps kind of guide the way and do the hard work. And then because of empathy and perspective and experience and listening to our elders, you're able to say, well, like, well, this is how the next generation might need these are the ways that we can help mentor them. These are the ways that we can help kind of break trail for them and like catch them up to speed so they don't have to do, they can just be creative, just exist.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like one day like we will be their elders and they will be learning from us, but more importantly we will also be learning from them, and we have like a symbiotic relationship to upkeep and to be held accountable for. Yeah.
So for those aspiring symbiotic friends, is there are there any technical, like, can you share a little bit about the technical process? Like, you know, what kind of cameras, what did you edit on? Like, even if you don't want to give away the trade secrets, like, give a little bit of insight, because there's a lot of beautiful shots. You know, there's some totally different footage. There's hot days, I'm sure, with a lot of families. Like, what is a little bit of that behind the scenes process? Like, again, we see it, we show it, but for folks who have no idea and they're like, oh, let's open up the that curtain a little bit and tell them what this process is like. Fernando, you look ready.
I honestly, it's weird because when I first talked to Giselle Carrillo, who's like one of the founders of Los Courage Camps, I just talked to her like, hey, let's just film what you're doing. Let's just record, you know. And in my mind, it was just like, let's just take 15-second clips of everything you're doing, you know, just 15 seconds here, 15 seconds there. And then eventually you have all these built up clips of what is happening. And then you kind of build a story from kind of just what is going on. So I always think my advice is, you know, it's almost like a nostalgic thing. Like if you think about your parents. So for me, I always get like when I was younger, my parents were recording me on a VHS, and they were recording me just to kind of remember what when I was younger it was going to be like. So when I was a little bit older, I was watching VHS tapes of myself as I was young, of just, you know, it's just still, even though I wasn't doing anything, it was like I was watching myself just being recorded. So I took this documentary at the beginning as like, you know, we're just gonna record at first with no intention. We're just gonna do it, and then eventually a story came out because there was a lot of people being impacted by what was actually occurring. So I think that's when I realized, hey, Giselle, this is really beautiful. Like a lot's going on. Jasenia tagged on, and there's just a lot of, you know, natural connections that happen. But I always think of it as like assets, you know, just like just record, just enjoy, and then eventually something happens.
How about you, Yesenia?
So similarly to what Fern was talking about is like, you know, you're capturing things not really with an intention in mind. And this is like a little bit of where the difference between creating a narrative, like a non-scripted narrative comes in, or like a scripted narrative comes in, right? So regardless, you're always going to have a script. You're always going to have that like preconception of like, oh, like, yeah, the world works this way or whatever, and I'm going to try to portray it like this. Especially as a director, that was like the attitude that I came in with. Like I had like my whole like my slides and everything, and I'm like, okay, and we're gonna hit this point and this point, and like, and then they're gonna say this and da da da, and then it's like I was going about it very in like a very how do I put this, like a like reality TV kind of way. But and then I realized like through working with Fern, I was like, okay, I think I just need to sit here and like I need to learn, I need to open my heart, I need to create space for these people, because it's like it's their stories. It's not my story. It's giving honor and you uplifting other people that like don't typically have the voice for themselves, but me being able to create that space is the biggest thing that I can be for this project. So I was like, okay, open eyes, open ears, open nose, open heart. And so I was just like taking everything in. And then so when you're putting something together without intention, just kind of like, you know, receiving until you're ready to like put that in action and be like in the masculine, like creating stuff. That's like the point when you're like keeping in mind, like, what am I making? Right. And then so the things that evoke an emotion in you are going to evoke an emotion in the viewer. So if like whatever you're creating is cathartic for the filmmakers, it's also going to be cathartic for the people watching. Like whatever the artist is making, it's very truly a mode of like bringing your emotions, your heart, your what everything that you're feeling, and just like transporting it into like a capsule, and other people experiencing that. And I think that's really powerful and something that is very easy. It sounds very complicated, but it's really about listening to yourself and trusting yourself as an artist. And I think that's like the biggest advice I could give to upcoming filmmakers is to make something that you care about, and don't just make it because it looks cool. Like make it because you feel something, and because it's your story to tell, right? Because a lot of people want to tell these stories that that they think everyone else wants to listen to, but like the reason why you were brought a certain project, or like the reason why you came into like circle with certain stories is because you had a certain amount of growth to embark on with this project. So I'm just like really excited to have like figured that out with this project as well. That there shouldn't be any what's the word for it? When people feel like they're fake. What's the word?
Like imposter syndrome?
Yeah, and I know our community like feels a lot of imposter syndrome, and I had to work through that really early. And so if anything, like that's like the biggest thing I would suggest everyone to work on. Like if you're feeling imposter syndrome, it's because it's probably not the room you want to be in, even though it's like good on paper or whatever. It's like, you know, you should really be following your heart and being trusting that you are working towards the project's highest, your highest timeline and the project's highest timeline, in that trusting. And I think I got that out correctly. Yeah. I think you're on mute.
Of course. There's a lot of similarities with that, with that work, and often what we find ourselves with the world of advocacy and conservation and policy and outdoor equity, where fantastic, where a lot of folks take this traditional route, this industry route, and you were thinking like at first you're like, I got to plan this in like a reality TV level of production, and then you like drew back and you're like, but these are community members. These are people experiencing things. They're not talent. Their community.
Yeah.
And so for us, we often find ourselves in these rooms where we're like, is this imposter syndrome or do we belong there? Right? Just like you were both saying, and trying to make our work authentic, where you're like, this is a version of things, and yes, it's been done this way for 100 years, or we can inform what the next 10, next 20, next 100 years are going to look like, by being authentic, by tapping into those cultural roots, by like leaning into it and not feeling awkward, by lifting each other up when we see each other. And you all have found a great way of combining your film school and your work, your connections and your networking with Giselle, to create something that's actually really good for the community. Because instead of being a concept that folks can go to, on the weekends or sign up for and be a part of Los Courage camps, you all are showing, don't just tell me, show me. And you have those beats, those emotional beats that help tie in this work, that people are like, okay, all right, now I have a concept that A, that this program exists, B, that this is important work, and then who are the people affected by it. So somebody mentioned in the comments that just the way that you were able to encapsulate that, I think that speaks to your work, that somebody knows about the organization, but then they see you and they're like, you got it.
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to be a little bit not, how do I say this, a little bit con cuidado of your stories, right? Because there are people that will tell your story, but not in the way that you will. And so I came up in the same way that a lot of the Courage kids would. Like, I'm an LA native. I grew up in the inner city, and like I had those challenges with myself of like, you know, you don't really grow up in sports because it's too expensive, and you're like, there's all these like little like you know, anxieties that you build up, and then it's like you get to the ocean and you're just like, oh, like just like it's done. Like, I don't have to worry about these things because like I'm becoming my own person, and like I can create my own life. So it was, I have to say that that's a big part of it as well, is like this wasn't a story that like I guess I came in and I came in at and was like, oh, I really like this, I'm gonna tell it. It's like, no, it's because it was something that I knew. Not like, so in Spanish there's like two words, right? There's like saber y conocer. Saber is like, you know of, and then conocer is like, oh no, like I've lived with this. And so it's that difference of saber and conocer, of like, yo conozco esto, like this is something that I energetically embody because it's something that I've gone through, and it's something that like it just resonates when I talk to like the Courage Camp kids. And I'm very grateful to Fern and to Giselle, to everyone, that we were able to make this happen.
Yay, saber y conocer. I mean, that's exactly it. That's brilliant.
Fern is a Courage kid too. He resonates.
That okay, so you do this with knowledge, with firsthand knowledge. So you know the audience. You know what you're working with, and that's so important. Especially again, like the traditional, whatever that means, way of coming into film and storytelling or documentary making. The traditional, whatever that means, way of getting into surfing. Like this is beautiful. Like there's just so much that you're like breaking barriers and making waves just by existing, just by doing what you're all doing.
I think one thing I wanted to like quickly share is the fact that in my experience, I went to college first year in Hawaii, and that happened like very out of a whim. And when I went there, I started learning the art of surf, because surf really started in Hawaii. It's a Hawaiian sport. It's really kind of grounds you into the nature of Earth. And after that whole experience of doing that, later on, I did a whole 2 months in Hawaii, in El Salvador, and I started to realize that in El Salvador, people are starting to surf as well. It's like, for me, I always saw surf as like, oh, Hawaii. This is like a Hawaiian, or it's a very Malibu white people sport. And this whole experience for me to do this documentary and to join people like Jasenia and join people like Giselle and Annie Dizette, is very like an experiential like awakening of how we can change the way things are seen, how we can change the way things are experienced based on our own experience of just doing it and being one of the first. So I just wanted to express how important it was in this whole experience to really be one of the first to do something like this. And maybe we're not the first people to do a documentary on surfing in Latino communities, but I also think it's like one of the first that I've seen. And I'm a documentarian. I've done documentaries for the past 4 years, and I've never seen something like this. So it makes me myself feel like if I'm one of the first and I've seen one of the first, then maybe it's not the first, but hey, it's the first time I've seen it.
Absolutely. And also, like, there's like 500 documentaries about the same rock in Yosemite. I think it's okay if we have 500 Latina created films about surfing. Like, it's about time we do. So keep making them, basically. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was Latino Conservation Week is about conservation. Protecting the places and the spaces that you love. So on a personal note, what is a place or a space outside that you love? A spot that brings you joy or tranquility or a certain sense of centering yourself? Yesenia?
So like I mentioned before, like in the Azusa Canyon, there's like all these trees coming over and they just feel like protectors over you as like the sun shines on all the rocks, and I'm just like a lizard laying by the river. That's like my spot.
How about you, Fernando?
I think it's definitely out in Hawaii. Hawaii kind of just showed me the kind of just being so far away from everyone, but also still being really connected with what is Earth. So Maui and Oahu have really shown me like that centering of, just nature.
I like the beach. Yeah, I like the ocean. Like the Pacific, it's huge. Like people go there and they all look out, and everyone has a different connection. Like they're just silent, or they're laughing, or like deep in thought, or happy, or mourning. Like just the range of emotions that they can connect with. Like for me, like just being near the ocean brings me that kind of calm. It gives me a sense of perspective, or like it's huge, it's vast, it will go on before and it will go on after you. And there's something beautiful about that. Okay, so then as you might have heard or seen on social media, both Latino Outdoors and Latino Conservation Week are celebrating our 10-year anniversaries this year. And what is a piece of advice you would have given yourself now that you would give yourself from 10 years ago?
That's really hard. That's really hard because I don't know. I was thinking about this earlier today, and I was like, I feel like me right now, like I would have kept everything a secret because I think baby me loves surprises. So I would have just been like, you're on your own.
That's fantastic.
I feel like recently I've been dealing with a lot of putting myself in uncomfortable situations and understanding that the uncomfortableness creates growth. So I would probably tell myself is like, hey, even though you don't like hiking, or even though you don't like doing things that are like out in nature and out strenuous and creating your body to just feel uncomfortable, the second after you do it, it's just like you always feel so much better. So just reminding myself probably would be like, hey, it's gonna feel uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, it's gonna feel super rewarding. Yeah. I think that's what my advice to myself would be.
That's cool. A range of answers. I appreciate that. We've got a question here from Heart and Brain Studios. The question is, as filmmakers, do you see yourselves continuing within the surfing world and deepening that storytelling, or are you ready to explore other spaces?
That's a good question.
I can answer that immediately because I have been in the filmmaking world for the past 4 years. I started with documentaries, doing micro documentaries for manufacturing companies, dealing with organizations that are way out of my reach. And I decided that I wanted to really focus on the story of water. So I really started going deep into the story of water and understanding how water it creates an impact, and it really does have like a story on its own. And it's a feminine quality, it's a feminine trait. And each of us have different experiences with water. So I started going deep into like the water story. And then when I started realizing that water is a story I wanted to tell, I started doing these micro stories. And then eventually I started realizing like, wait, I can use surfing as one of those catalysts to telling stories of water, because water in itself, the ocean, is very healing. So I just started going deep into that. So I think I want to continue with the ocean, and that's probably the question I was on. Is like I think I see myself going deeper into how, because the ocean is one of those most undiscovered places that people are still not really sure what's next.
That's great. That's amazing. Yesenia?
So, man, with surfing in particular, I'd love to explore it further, but it's a little bit difficult, right? Because it's like we're we're teetering something that's like very it's both like athletic but also very very spiritual, and there's like a big history behind it. Um, I see myself starting to cover stories that explore the internal world with the external world and just like the relationship that can bring together. Um, so, you see a lot of like surf films out there that it's like, oh, just the visuals are like amazing, but the real story comes in like discovering things. And I think that's like what I ultimately want to serve the world with is um, with them like discovering new things about nature, about surfing, about the way that we can interact um, with the natural world around us, because essentially what we're doing is like by covering surfing, we're like also creating an emphasis on building a relationship with the natural world, and thus making people feel like safer with being like protectors of the natural world, and with like inspiring that stewardship.
Right. Yeah, okay. So I love these answers, and also the fact that, like, sometimes like you have conversations that you're like, I hadn't thought of that. Thanks for asking. Now I've got an idea of how I feel about that, and I'm asking myself a lot of these same questions, like, as we're going, like, comparing to myself. So I appreciate you both sharing, like, not just the technical side of this film that you created, but also, like you said, both the sport, the technical, and the spiritual side of all this work, and the stewardship side. Like, we do have a certain responsibility, like, especially with the water. If this is where we are engaging, we have a certain responsibility to make sure, in our own way, through some sort of storytelling or advocacy, to use that platform to leave the world a better place. So then, we asked about the, like, yourself from 10 years ago. Let's look 10 years into the future. What is a world, of filmmaking or of documentaries and storytelling, especially when it comes to Latinx voices and representation? In 10 years, what world would you like to see? We've had conversations about structure and coming up this way and imposter syndrome, and we've heard it a million times and seen it, lack of representation. So what kind of world would you envision, would you hope for 10 years from now?
I can go first on that one. Yeah. Or do you want to go?
No, that's all you.
Okay. So I found that growing up, I was like really externally involved with what I wanted the world to look like. I was big on advocacy for immigrants, big on connect like decolonization and all these movements. And I realized that the biggest change that you can make is the change that happens inside yourself, inside the individual. And so, if anything, especially with storytelling, and with any project that involves like an extended amount of energy, I'd love to involve the understanding that the best way to live is, by honoring not only ourselves but our ancestors. So just returning back to those principles that ultimately give us life, because you can fight as much as you can. You can fight until you're dead. Like, you can be like Emiliano Zapata, like, I rather, what is it, die on my knees than live on my feet, something like that. You know what I'm talking about. But it's about creating the worlds that we want to live in, because the worlds that are unsustainable they're going to self-destruct in and of themselves. There's no worrying. We can worry about it and we can fight against it, but essentially, like, where we need everyone is in their creation energy, in what feeds them, in creating what the world is to look like without all the like the hatred and stuff. Like there needs to be a balance. And as for myself, I'm not exactly sure where that would be, because again, me as being my older self from 10 years ago, I didn't tell myself anything. So 10 years after, I'm not gonna share any secrets with myself right now either. So
That's right.
We'll see where it goes. Yeah.
Fernando, you future.
I don't know. I'm very. I feel like I've put myself in a position where I always just kind of go with things. So I'm from Massachusetts originally. So I came out to LA 2 years ago, maybe. But I grew up coming to LA as a kid because my grandmother immigrated from El Salvador to LA. She stayed here her whole life. And I don't know. I just always have gone with the flow, and I feel very whimsical doing that. And in some way, I feel very intentional when I do things, and I make creative decisions, and I make decisions that make big impacts into things. But I always feel like my biggest intention is just creating an impact in a community and making an impact in a way that isn't so much just doing something and hitting that community and then walking away, and more in a way of like there is some sort of statistics that have occurred, and there is some sort of impact that I've made in some sort of, I don't know, just creative way, or made an impact in some sort of way that has hit the community and has actually benefited them. Because I'm from, like I said, Worcester, Massachusetts is like a really small community, and I feel like that's where I really started getting into guerrilla style filmmaking, and just filmmaking and just recording with no intention. But at the end of the day, it has such a big impact because you've recorded so much, and you've really documented so much of what has really made the organization or group grow.
So yeah, I think that is something important, that that the world was extremely structured and telling us how it should be and laying out, what 10 years are going to look like from now. And that didn't go so great, but I'm a hopeful individual. And I agree that with all the heaviness that's happening in the world, finding some joy, I do believe that there is some revolutionary act in finding joy, especially since so many folks in the Latina community have been deprived of that for us to be able to get to this place and be like, I'll take it one day at a time in a good way.
Yeah.
Because our ancestors have fought and toiled and suffered so that we could get to this place where we're like, we'll see. From a place of safety, from a place of creativity. So I really respect that. I love that the flexibility. Honestly, the world will, we will continue, and as long as there are good people like you, important stories like this being told, and filmmakers and hearts like yours, I think, and the kids from Courage Camp and Giselle and everybody involved with that, I think we're heading in a great direction. There are rays of sunshine like that, and to show those rays of sunshine, I think helps reinforce that there is joy to be found. There's hope to be found in this work that we're doing, even though it may seem hopeless sometimes. Okay, so then I've got a question, kind of to start wrapping things up. But what's next for Los Courage Camps Creando Olas? And, how can we support the important filmmaking work that you all are doing? What's our call to action?
Ooh.
I've always felt like the call to action in this scenario is kind of just understanding that at the end of the day, it's a tough one, but I think it's like we're all here we can join an organization or we can sign up for something, but at the end of the day, it's like, for me, I see courage camps as one of those things, is like, I don't know, just take the risk and do something you're uncomfortable with, you know, just do something that's new to you. Like for me, surfing was never in my timeline. And when I finally did start doing it, I realized the benefits spiritually, and I realized the benefits emotionally, and like so much. When I went to El Salvador for 2 months, I realized El Salvador is starting to become the surf city, they're called, and I was just like, whoa, like surfing is actually in my DNA in some sort. So I just like, I don't know, it's just like the call to action, just do things that make you uncomfortable, and um, yeah, I don't know. Just do things that make you uncomfortable, to be honest. That's my call to action. I think the whole thing about creando olas is really creating ripple effects of that uncomfortableness, and creating ripple effects of the change that can be made generationally based off of our past trauma, and just recovering from things that before made us uncomfortable and now making us more secure that we got this. We just got to hit it, you know?
Yeah, because courage is a muscle, and it's like constantly um having to reaffirm yourself, because just as friend said, there's like things that have happened in the past, and like, you know, he speaks about DNA, and there's like this whole idea of like trauma being passed down in the DNA. You're like not only processing your own trauma, but like the 7 years past. So being aware of that, and being aware that you're like healing your lineage, and flexing that muscle, and just doing little things here and there that like, you know, building an internal narrative with yourself, and you know, like even babying yourself a little bit, because like nobody else is gonna do it. So you can be like, okay, like you got this, like you're strong enough to do this. And yeah, so just creating a relationship with yourself so that you're strong enough to move forward in life courageously.
I love it. And then Los Courage Camps, August, Santa Monica. Yeah.
Oh, right, because next steps of the film. So we will be officially premiering in person at the Patagonia in Santa Monica, August 30th. So if anybody's in LA, you guys are all invited to that. And we'll be so excited and happy to see your faces. And yeah, we're stoked for that. We're gonna do some film festival rounds. And yeah, I mean, keep in touch with us.
Absolutely. And then do you all have Instagram handles or anything like that that you want folks to follow? Anything like that?
Yeah. Would we just put that in the comment section?
Yes, please.
Okay, joining the chat.
As
Friend,
I just want to say, super grateful for being invited on this. And in general, this is, I think, what is happening recreationally is in the Latino community specifically. I always feel like it's always been left out in the narrative that hasn't been spoken of too much. And in my personal experience, I feel like a lot of times it's always like we don't do this stuff because we can't do this stuff, you know. And I feel like the narrative that's really changing and really developing new stories like Los Courage Camps or Creando Olas is really organizations like you guys that are really exploring the new ideas of really, we're just gonna go out there and create new stories. So thank you for having me. Truly.
yeah, I'm really grateful that this week exists in and of itself.
Absolutely. And yeah, like we will keep talking about courage camps and Los Courage Camps in this film. And I know we're talking to Giselle on Tuesday. So the story continues, and we're so excited to have been able to share this space with you all, you know, and take part of this important kind of sharing to the public this beautiful story and this beautiful work by you all. We're privileged for you all to trust us with this space and this time. So Really appreciate it, and congratulations again. Beautiful film. And we're gonna show a couple of like little short films and a couple of trailers afterwards. But we just wanted to say thank you both so much for joining us for the Los Courage Camps Creando Olas filmmaker Q&A and screening, and for helping us kick off the 10-year anniversary of Latino Conservation Week and Latino Outdoors. Thank you both so much, and we will be in touch, and make sure everybody to go ahead and follow them and visit loscouragecamps.com or .org, and we will see you on the waves.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much.
Conservation work for me is about people, and I think I'm really trying to like create the experiences I had as a kid for kids here. A lot of people are still stuck on this singular model, but it's really about the entire family. If the whole family goes out, experiences a place, begins to love a place, then that becomes culture. That's what lasts.
My earliest memory of advocacy is going to the polls with my dad.
I was at USC when the war was going on in El Salvador. We were protesting the U.S. involvement in the war.
What it means to be an advocate is almost like to be a true friend. And then before you know it, you're an advocate for a cause.
Green Latinos is a nationwide comunidad of Latino, Latina, Latine, environmental and conservation champions.
This week we had our advocates from across the country, Green Latinos members, come to DC for a fly-in to have the experience of being able to advocate for their issues in front of their own state legislators at the federal level here in DC.
We trained people who had never been here before, people who have come here before. We gave them the skills to become even greater leaders, leading these groups all across the Capitol, all across the White House, and really leveraging their voices.
I've done advocacy at my state capitol in Sacramento.
This is actually my second time advocating at the Capitol, but it's probably the most immersive and the best coordinated experience that I've had.
There's not enough words to say how incredibly inspired I am by all of the advocates who participated so passionately. I think it was really amazing creating these opportunities for us to come together and speak in unison and represent folks in this country who are a lot of times not heard.
We released a report we've been working on for a year, the Latino Climate Justice Framework, which is our Nuestro New Deal.
The LCJF is a blueprint for the Latino, Latina, Latinx community. Over a year ago, a few of us came together and realized there was a gap out there. And so we knew that it was time to create a framework for our comunidad.
Developing that environmental identity is so critical in order for us to be able to see ourselves as part of the ecosystems that we want to protect and advocate for.
It empowers advocates at every level to become instant experts and to have this in their back pocket that they can take and show and say, this is what we're fighting for.
I hope that this report is the beginning, not just the end, and I hope that it really starts the movement, a movement of bridging the gap between decision makers and advocates.
There's a lot of work ahead of us, and there's a long way to go, and we can only do that together.
We only work in community, and we only succeed in community.
We are all independent, but together we are more.
It kind of feels like a renaissance of some sort, you know what I mean? It just feels like a new beginning.
To do it with folks who I now consider friends and colleagues is extremely life-changing.
And this is an opportunity that I don't think I would have been able to participate in had it not been for Green Latinos.
To stand up for our children, our grandchildren, our nieces, our nephews, and their future. What did you do when you had a chance to work to solve the climate crisis? Were you there? Did you stand up for us? Did you fight for us? You can proudly say yes. And so let's take advantage of this moment now and work together on that. Join us.
My name is Lucinda Irene Hinojos. My artist name is La Morena. I am from Phoenix, Arizona. I am Chihuahua, Apache, Pima, Yaqui from my mother's side, and Chicana. So the power of art to me is painting murals that unite communities, that bring people together, that tell stories and educate and heal people. The mural is of a migrant girl who represents many migrant children that have been detained by ICE in our border under the Trump administration. The little boy at the bottom is representing other migrant kids that have actually been detained and freed. And so we're still trying to fight to have them reunite with their families. The border is in the mural to represent the separation between the families. The hummingbirds represent light workers and messengers. They travel between freely, and to me, spiritually, they've been connected to me, so I added them to the mural. Or on the border, we wrote, "End family separation," because we are demanding that with this mural that we want change. We want families to remain together and not separated. It is a couple feet from our state capitol and a one-way road where people protest and rally and walk through and have to see. Not only that, we have state employees, we have government buildings, we have the Phoenix PD that is down the street. So this is like a slap in their face to pay attention, to wake up and connect that we are all human beings. Artivism is me using my platform, which is art. Paintings, murals. Murals create change. This is my way of being a healer. This is the way I know how to heal and help people and send out love, because that's what we need right now.
So it being my first camp out, I was really excited to meet a lot of people, but because it's still COVID times, I also felt a lot of anxiety over that. But despite that, it was really nice to reconnect and see new faces out here as well.
This is my second Latino Outdoors camp out. I'm so happy to be here. We're under redwoods, so meeting folks from all over and just kind of reconnecting, bonding, and really healing from the past two that we've had.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful weekend with some amazing people. I just doing this in communion with folks is like a once in a lifetime experience that we get to do on a regular basis, like at least annually. It's beautiful to reconnect with people, see people in the flesh, you know, especially after a very traumatic year and some change. It was great just to, you know, be in proximity of people and share experiences together.
Have you ever tried to make rain with a group of people?
Rain?
Yeah, how to do that. It's just dampness, right? And then we start here to put it out of louder, louder, louder. And stomping our feet now, louder. Thunder and rain. You feel it? It's getting full. Come on, don't stop. Louder, louder. You have a lot of food today. You have a lot of energy. Yeah.
We're out there. We are in these spaces, and we, you know, are experts in our own rights to kind of tell our stories, to feel empowered.
After a pandemic year, we have Latino outdoors leaders from across the U.S. that have come together for this leadership campout as an opportunity really to be in physical proximity to each other, but more importantly, to be able to visualize and really experience those connections that have been made online and over a work of years that has had that type of impact. And what's exciting is it's an opportunity to learn, it's an opportunity to be in community, it's an opportunity to catch up, it's an opportunity to reinforce and build the relationships that are essential when we do work at the scale that we do.
It's nice to see that what Jose has created is lasting, and it's something that, you know, one of my main things is you don't just want to start something, you want to also make sure that it can continue to grow, and just to camp out today is proof of that, and that meant so much to me today to see that. So all the new faces and the new spaces.
My love of mushrooms started just by exploring the redwood forest. We get a lot of mushrooms here because of the amount of rain that we get here. This is a temperate rainforest, so we get a lot of rain and the mushrooms love the rain. And I find mushrooms very interesting because they are very communal. The fungi are very communal. They use mycelium networks underneath the ground to communicate with trees and share nutrients with trees. I got started with Latino Outdoors. I think I might have heard of them through online, but someone me presentó a Ruby and told me that Ruby was the head of Latino Outdoors here in Humboldt County. And I really wanted to join something like this in this area because Humboldt County doesn't have a lot of cultural diversity. And I was really eager and hungry to be with people that I could relate to, but also be outdoors and be learning about recreation and about like outdoor education and science. So I'm very glad that I met Ruby and that there was a Latino Outdoors Humboldt chapter already created here.
You shall not pass. Fuego, fuego en mi alma. Fuego, fuego en mi corazón. Fuego, mi amor por ti es puro fuego. Fuego, mi amor por ti es puro fuego. Fuego, puro fuego es mi amor por ti.
So with the app, you record the sound and it tells you what.
Yeah, no, it'll do it live. Like you just, and then you record it because then it's so that you can go back and hear it and then compare it to the official song. and then you can confirm like, okay, it is this, or no, it, you know, with somebody in the background. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you? Oh. Wow.
Being able to find friendships and relationships that are going to last generations to come. And, you know, I hope one day when my son's old enough, he can be a volunteer and be able to pass that on, maybe to his children. So I'm really happy that I was able to come this year. And I look forward to seeing all the growth within all the people that I've met.
When we first founded Latino Outdoors, it was that question. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How would we describe it? This idea of a broad spectrum and diversity of Latinx identity in relation to a broad spectrum of outdoor experiences. What does that look like? And this is what it looks like. The exciting part is being able to really see what it looks like in community, in laughter, in joy, in curiosity, in wonder, in reflectiveness, in co-leadership and learning. And that's what's exciting to me, because the simplicity of this, it didn't exist before, and now it does. And it does in the way that's manifested through this community.
Oh, of course.
In 2022, we're looking forward to hosting our 2022 National Leadership Campout in Yosemite National Park, fingers crossed. And for the entire year, we're just excited to connect more people with the outdoors, inspire people with our stories, and just help foster more outdoor leadership, diverse outdoor leadership.
Most of us believe in an origin story of how we got here. But no matter what that is, our lives started with a deep connection to the water. In the beginning, we are like fish. We all know how to swim before we ever learn how to walk.
To me, the ocean means connection. Connection to self, to community, and to the earth. I don't see the shoreline between the earth and the water as a border, but as a door. Welcoming self-exploration, inviting us to go deeper.
When you dive under the sea, you become in tune with your mind, body, and surroundings. Being submerged under a body of water allows you to feel completely present. There is no noise or drama from the world above. It is a quiet place that brings peace within you.
Hay tantos misterios no resueltos, tanto más grandes que nosotros. El mar es uno de ellos.
There's a reason we're all inherently drawn to water, why it calms us, soothes us, and brings us back to equilibrium.
Our hearts, our brains, and our planet have one thing in common. 70 to 73% is water. %70 of the air we breathe comes from the ocean. It's home to about 80% of all life on Earth. It regulates our weather and climate. It provides for every breath we take.
We're all made of water. It's time to return to that inherent knowing that lives deep within us.
Muchos latinos en Estados Unidos viven cerca de la costa, pero nunca han tocado el mar.
In these waters, I see the reflection of my people. Whether you live by the ocean or not, these waters connect us all and flow through our lives in some way. It affects our food source, our culture, our people, and our future. As a Latino, I see the barriers of access that exist for my community. In order to build bridges, we have to remind ourselves that the ocean has no boundaries. It does not discriminate, and we all have a sense of place and belonging here. That is the great gift of the ocean. It's expansive and limitless, so it encourages us to remove our own mental barriers.
There's this powerful and calming feeling when you're in the ocean. A feeling of completeness, of total presence, and just being. It makes me feel that I belong here.
El océano es un testigo de nuestro presente. Y también lo será de nuestro futuro. A través de sus aguas, vidas e ideas han viajado, conectándonos unos a otros.
Cuando miré al horizonte, vi esperanza, esperanza de una nueva vida. No sabemos cuán vasto es el horizonte hasta que tienes la oportunidad de pararte del otro lado. Dejé mi país hace muchos años con mi familia para comenzar una nueva vida. Estaba lleno de miedo y esperanza. Sabía los riesgos, no tenía idea de lo que iba a pasar. Mi única esperanza era cruzar el océano por una vida, por un futuro.
It's us, right now, that need to make a significant change to ensure that our children's children have a life to look forward to beyond the horizon. We have to remember that we are not separate from the world beneath the surface. Hey, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
My name's Mario, and I'm just here with a nonprofit that I started. It's called Un Mar de Colores, and it teaches children of color and underserved youth how to surf. It's our community that is disproportionately affected by global warming. But we have more power than we think. Yes, we've been marginalized, but we are no longer a minority. Our voices matter. We have the ability to create systemic and institutional change. We can influence the policies that affect our communities. We have to take care of each other by taking care of the ocean.
Hemos sido creados para vivir en armonía con la naturaleza, no por encima de ella.
I think we know deep down that we aren't supposed to move that fast. We crave the feeling of calmness and being able to move with the natural rhythms of life. Sometimes the world moves so fast that we get distracted and forget that we aren't the center of the universe, but a part of it.
We aren't just talking about environmental impacts, but economic and social impacts too. Our fish are dying, and our fishermen no longer have the resources to feed our communities.
Dios nos ha dado el regalo de la conciencia. Yo me pregunto, ¿por qué a pesar de tenerla, nos seguimos negando a ver el impacto que ocasionamos a nuestra madre tierra?
Nature is this beautiful, miraculous gift. It's our responsibility to be caretakers of it, to steward the land and the water, and to live in harmony with what was given to us.
Nosotros hemos roto el equilibrio. Es hora de restablecerlo. No hay que ser un científico para lograr cambios. Basta con observar y actuar en consecuencia.
If we look at the world through a child's eyes, with childlike wonder, we see all the miracles and all the beauty. We see hope and possibilities, and we see an infinite horizon. When we develop a love and passion for something, when we look at a place as our home, we feel pride in it, and we want to protect it. Let's ask ourselves, how can we build a relationship to the ocean? This is what fosters a sense of stewardship, to want to leave a place better than we found it. All we have to do is start where we are with what we have and just enjoy.
Just imagine if everybody did their best, how much change that could create. If we all started to just observe ourselves and recognize the power of our individual actions, as simple as they seem, they add up to something significant.
Porque si no transmitimos nuestro conocimiento a las generaciones de relevo, posiblemente no entenderán lo crucial del momento en que vivimos.
Most of us believe in an origin story of how we got here. But no matter what that is, we are here now. What matters is what we do with the time we have been given. How do we care for everyone and everything as if it's not separate from us, but fluidly connected to us?
Individually, we are single drops of water, but together, we can create a tidal wave of change. Together, we are an ocean.
And in the end, we are all made of water.